AP UDYR MID, a brick wall of a mid laner, with AP scaling shields and healing to keep him alive forever, and a huge damage AP ultimate that slows and chases enemies even under their tower. Meet Lobsterman. Yes, that's actually his league name. I asked him why, and he just said, I like lobsters. He is a Grandmaster player who got there with AP UDYR MID. Of course, with some crazy new strategies, like this psychopathic level 1 play that he uses to win the lane immediately, having huge ultimate damage and slows that no enemy ever expects, letting him go for lots of 1v1 kills, and using his AoE damage to win team fights. Let me show you how this player does it, and also why Faker has been inspired by his build. But first, recently something amazing happened. Alienware sent me their X15R2 laptop, a 15-inch super portable, super powerful gaming laptop. Here are the specs that I got, but this laptop even goes up to 12th gen i9 processor, Nvidia 3080 Ti, and 8 terabytes of storage. It's insane. They really have an option for every budget. My favourite part so far is the special screen. This is a 360Hz screen, the highest I've seen in my whole life, and it's so smooth to play games on. It's a whole different experience to playing on 60Hz. And to back it up, this thing is also really good at running games. From League of Legends on perfect settings, to impressive looking AAA games on the highest settings, and the screen just makes them look beautiful. Also having full speed performance mode, where it cranks up the performance to make it even smoother, in exchange for using more power. I've been loving using this laptop to work and edit on. Having a really powerful portable workstation frees up my life a lot, and since getting it, I've really been able to work wherever I want to instead of being stuck in one place. The battery power is very good, and of course, as it's Alienware, not only do you get their amazing customer support, you also get their incredible customizable lighting all over the laptop, from the back to the keyboard, and even has macro keys you can customize. I've used some laptops in the past, but nothing anywhere near as good as this one that can actually fully replace a desktop PC for gaming and work. So if you want to get your own X15R2, I highly recommend you check out the link in the description to see all of their options to fit any budget. Back to AP UDYR and Lobsterman, a player whose league career started right at the top of the solo queue ladder. Just a few seasons after starting the game, he hit Challenger 900 LP, playing mostly control mages like Talia, and some assassins thrown in like Talon. However, unlike most players, instead of continuing to climb, he actually started to fall in rank over the seasons, dropping all the way to Diamond 2 due to meta changes, and a lack of time to dedicate to the game. Even when he did come back at full force, he was struggling to get past Master, becoming very frustrated by this. Lobsterman was sick of playing the meta champions that should be getting him wins. They just weren't working. Seemingly out of anger, he wanted to find something no one had ever played, and take it to his main role of mid lane, just to see if anything could work. At this time, the UDYR rework had just come out, and the champion was looking good, but Lobsterman saw something that other players did not. Most players were focused on his AD and tank playstyles for jungle, but for mid lane he noticed the AP scalings on UDYR's W and ult. These are the reasons why AP UDYR works. With the shielding and healing on his W scaling with AP, he realised that UDYR in a lane would work, and in mid lane against weak early game mages and scaling picks, his shield would be even stronger. But he was not just tanky, he also had a very high base damage ult, which also scales well with AP. Even just the bonus XP for mid lane would make a huge difference. You can see the power of this base damage at level 1 with the hilarious play that Lobsterman does. He wards the enemy raptors for safety from ganks, and then he flanks behind the enemy mid laner, taking his ultimate, the Storm. He also has his passive, the Awaken, to upgrade this ability, so he simply runs at the enemy mid laner, with the ult slowing them by 25%, and then they get pushed away by the Storm. UDYR can walk away, but the Storm will keep chasing them, dealing over 9% max HP damage even at level 1 with only a Doran's Ring. In melee matchups he can take Ignite and even get a kill here, as no one really expects UDYR's Storm to solo kill them, otherwise he goes back to the wave and waits for level 2. At level 2 he takes his W, the low cooldown shield. The numbers on this are crazy. Every 6 seconds he can shield for 80 health, and also his next 2 auto attacks give him lifesteal, and of course all of these scale with AP. This is almost too much for any mid laner to poke off, especially AP mages who can't really poke you down anymore. This ability is really balanced around the jungle camp damage, which is very low, so in mid lane it kinda makes you unmovable. He is playing completely around his passive cooldown, the Awaken. When it's down he should be playing slow and picking up CS, but when it comes up he can get a big heal from his W. The empowered heal is huge, undoing any poke, and getting him to even higher health, also getting even more lifesteal from his auto attacks. This is why the level 1 trade is such a good idea. UDYR has so much healing and enemies mostly don't. At level 3 UDYR will have Awaken coming back back up again. So his game plan is to take another point in his ult and look for a play. So far the wave should be around the middle of the lane, he doesn't push much early on. So with it in a good spot and the Awaken coming up, he can look for a solo kill. Using the extra damage and slow this second point gives him helps trap the enemy mid inside the zone. They take way more damage than they expect, and they're also stuck in range of UDYR's auto attacks, letting him flash forwards to finish off the kill. This power spike of being level 3 or 4 and having Awaken available is probably the most important part of AP UDYR mid. You always want to try and do something with it, as at this point of the game you're probably stronger than every other champion. If the enemy mid is too hard to catch, he can also roam using this power spike, going bot lane, picking up a free kill, and then using the ult damage to practically 100 to 0 Nautilus while chasing him. Taking E at level 4, he can also go for an outplay using the empowered version. This makes him unstoppable, easily dodging the Syndra stun and removing her only peel tool, slowing and finishing the kill with the ult. Even the empowered W can be used as an outplay tool, using the huge shield and healing to counter a burst champion. He absorbs all of the damage with the shield, and then turns the fight when the enemy has no cooldowns left. With an early base he wants to buy Dark Seal, and is also rushing early Merc Treads against AP champions or Steel Caps against AD. By getting these as early as he can, he'll always have a movement speed advantage over enemies. This has incredible synergy with his ult. Already it's going to slow them, and he also has more speed than them, even able to take Ghost against ranged champions, making it very easy to catch and kill them. The ultimate slow and damage is his main kill tool, so putting all of this gold into making it better is the best way for him to get fed. The first item UDYR mid usually rushes is Demonic Embrace. It gives some good AP as well as extra health to make him harder to kill, and when completed the burn damage has great synergy with his ult, as the ult damage acts as a tick, so the burn damage is repeatedly applied for the whole duration. So buying early components to get to this item, his ult becomes vital wave clear, making roaming very easy. With the extra movement speed from boots, he sprints to bot lane, easily outrunning any bot lane champion, collecting a kill and then sprinting back mid, not losing any CS. If he's playing against a ranged mid laner, and uses the speed to outrun enemies to enable the burst on his ultimate to get more kills. However, against melee mids he is more strategic. Instead of fighting, he's using the Awakened ult every time it's available to trade without the enemy mid being able to hit him. This very quickly chips away at their health bar and forces them into an unwinnable situation. They can't fight UDYR as his damage and health is too high, they can't push wave against him as his wave clear is too good, and so they're stuck under tower catching waves, with UDYR getting constant priority so he can roam first, also having the option to buy early Seeker's Arm Guard against AD champions, making these 1v1s very one-sided. The next huge power spike is pretty much when Rift Herald spawns. He always wants to fight it, because this point is the biggest gap between UDYR and the enemies. AP UDYR is already starting to peak in power, while the enemy mid and top laner are still scaling trying to get their first item. So UDYR is already very hard to kill with all of the health and resistances, and does great AoE damage with the AP components, so it's an ideal window to force a fight. This is where you start to see the different tricks UDYR can use his ult for, even being used at long range. UDYR can go into a risky fight, use Awakened ultimate and unleash it onto the enemy. UDYR runs away, and the enemy will still die, so it works great for diving people. This is probably the most disastrous situation a mid laner can have. You're diving mid, and the enemy jungle counter-ganks you, and so does their support. This could have been a game-losing play for UDYR, but with an empowered ultimate, Syndra is 100 to 0'd. Then a perfect Lee Sin kick into the empowered ult also kills Sylas, so this potentially awful dive ends with 2 kills and a safe escape. You can see how powerful and safe this pick is if you play it correctly. UDYR is immobile and low range, but the reason AP UDYR is still effective despite this is that all he has to do is tap an enemy slightly with a slow on his ult, then they can no longer get away. He doesn't buy any CC items, he just maxes this ability first, getting up to 40% slow. Ranged champions are caught and can't escape, and melee champions are slowed so they can't get in range of you to DPS you, letting UDYR kite around them while they die. This build has no mana items, as UDYR's abilities are so cheap that if you just buy some AP, then just one ultimate will clear a full wave, only costing 40 mana, and this is why he builds Zhonya's next. It has the damage and tankiness, but he really just loves the outplay potential of the item. If the enemy mid outroams him, UDYR doesn't mind too much as he can shove the wave very quickly, and takes 1 point in his Q for the extra attack speed so he can kill the plates faster. However, importantly, he does save his Awakened ability every time he's pushing in a risky spot. Like here, he uses empowered E, dodging the hook CC and running off even faster. So, by now it's pretty clear this strategy is all about using the champion's early game tankiness and burst to get kills and then snowball the game, and our player does this perfectly in most games. But what if UDYR gets behind? Well, to be honest, if you're behind in Korean solo queue, there's already a pretty good chance you're going to lose, regardless of what champion you're playing. The region is so snowbally that even though UDYR can get outscaled due to his mobility issues, it often doesn't matter because his early game and mid game are so strong. He can get his team a 15k gold lead and then end before he falls off. Most of the games he plays are 15 to 20 minutes in duration, including the losses, so on this server there's not very much effort put into comebacks. So this pick is mainly useful because of how often it can get ahead, similar to a pick like Elise. The most effective comeback strategy in League is just to never get behind in the first place. And so we enter teamfights. If ahead, this pick is amazing, running around, burning enemies, and quite literally being unstoppable. However, if the game is even, you're not going to be jumping into 5 people. He is balling up with his team, using his empowered E to outplay CC, setting up stuns, or sending his empowered ult into a group of enemies to DPS them while he stays safe. It's very similar to fighting within an Anivia. The fight starts off slow, using ult to zone people, and then once you've done enough damage you can commit with your ult, trapping enemies and using Zhonya's to stay alive while it happens. This is where the build splits in half. He has 2 options. If he is the main damage on his team, he sticks with a full AP build, even adding a Void Staff, even when he's not playing against tanks, as he believes it's just efficient for damage. But if he has some scaling carries on his team, he can instead go Radiant Virtue as his 3rd item. This comboed with his low cooldown ult buffs his max health a huge amount, healing him and his allies and giving ability haste to everyone. There aren't really any better stats for an UDYR who's grouped up with his teammates, it's perfect. He is still a damage threat, but can take a lot more damage as well to be useful in these hard to access fights. The main issue with AP UDYR mid is in this clip. AP UDYR is not a 1v9 DPSer, as his ultimate is not infinite. He requires some help from his team if he wants to win later fights. You can see in this one, he practically kills 2 people by himself, but then his teammates misplay and misposition and then they die. The enemies heal up and UDYR is left alone. He can't kill anyone else, he can't survive, and they end up losing this game. The way this player wins games is by using the very strong early power to get kills and snowball to end the game fast. The way he loses games is if this plan doesn't work. For example, they don't snowball enough, they have a bad team comp that can't end, or his teammates misplay in fights. However, since solo queue is snowbally by nature, this strategy works very well. I'm a huge fan of tanky BRUISER mids that also have good damage, as they're often more reliable or just less risky than full AP mids. So I do believe in this pick, and apparently so does Faker, as he's also been playing it in solo queue recently. Clearly inspired by this player as they're both in the same rank. Faker plays with a phase rush build, and I'll include that at the end as well. Our player says that all matchups are good for AP UDYR, as he's strong enough to fight anyone 1v1, and otherwise can always get priority. The main hard matchups are mobile mids that he can't reach. However, Yone is also a good ban, as he outscales your damage. For his full build, it's quite specific with the components he buys for each power spike, but the core items are always the same. Korean solo queue games are often over by the time he gets just 2 items, so with this pick that should be your goal. However, if needed, this is where he can add some extra tankiness or go full AP. Faker's build is much more tanky and utility based to start off. I think it's a nice idea, but I think it's too low in damage for both solo queue and pro play. Lobsterman plays with Conqueror every game, with his empowered ultimate stacking it by itself, making his laning even easier, and approach velocity of course, with his ultimate slowing. He can run circles around enemies. Lobsterman has a Twitch and YouTube, they're all in Korean, but if you want to see him play against Korean pro players, they're great to watch regardless. Thanks so much for watching.